Aaron with Bowtie Treasures. How's everybody doing this Saturday night? And ready to go with a brand new project. And as you all stop in tonight, please make sure you say hi. Let us know where you're watching from. And love to see your comments popping up and your likes and all the other goodness. If you see that your friends might like this technique, holler at them, let them know to come over too. Tonight I am going to be working on this Empire style dresser, and it is looking bright right now, but we have a lot of work to do on it. But hopefully it's entertaining, hopefully you learn something, maybe inspire you to try something different with your techniques and your work. And tonight's really, that's what it's all about. So we're gonna add some awesome to this piece. Back up and show you the steps we did. First of all, I cleaned this piece with Dixie Belle's White Lightning, and I like to mix it in a bucket and clean it with White Lightning and then clean all that out and rinse it with water. So you can see I even put some, I like to use the gloves and just gave it a good cleaning, get all of that done. And then I really love Dixie Belle's Gray-B.O.S.S. It sets a really good tone for what I'm doing. In fact, if I got you really close, you could even see some of the Gray-B.O.S.S peeking through. I only put one coat of this color on, but I'd rather have the gray showing than a white. So the Gray-B.O.S.S is great. And even in the picture, you'll see that I'm using the Dixie Belle Mini. All these are great products you can get. Here in this picture, I've already done the Boss, and I started painting Dixie Belle Blue. And I love the color. I try to paint a little post for every color I've used, and I couldn't find one, and this one hadn't been open. So new color for me to introduce. And so anyways, that's where we are. One coat of Boss, one coat of Dixie Belle Blue, and we are up and running. Hopefully I can get through the whole process on the front. I have my heat gun off to the left if we need to speed things up a little bit, but I think we'll do okay. And it'll all work together really well. So I do appreciate you guys all tuning in and saying hi as you drop in. We're not going to be doing the Dixie Belle Blue. We're done with that. Now we're going to pull out the Rusty Nail. That's the next color. And Rusty Nail is going to give us what I would consider a complement color and almost simulate too a little bit as if the wood was peeking through. It's really a bold color for this piece. And I want you to really kind of hang on to the end because it really all does come together for a nice, really styled look. And it's something that you can adapt, choose your own colors, try your own style. You may not have all these colors. I think you could substitute Rusty Nail for a dark teal or rebel yellow for something brighter. So there's so many ways to go with this, and that's the fun about it, okay? So I have the next step that I'm going to be using is kind of like a scraper palette knife. I've got 3 here just to illustrate the different types. This would be more that an artist would use to mix paint on a palette. So like oil paints. So that's what that would be for. This one's a typical 1.5 inch type scraper palette knife. And this one's a little bit larger. I'm not using this one tonight, but I have it available if I want a larger area. But it's a little stiffer than say something. And by the way, there's different thicknesses of these. If you go to like a box store, you might just give it a little bit of bend. If it bends really easily, it might not be sturdy enough. I've had one where it's thinner than this and I've already bent it. So give it a little bit of, it needs to be nice and firm. This one I'm not really going to use tonight, but I have it if I feel like I have a tight space I can't get into. So I have a nice variety of those sitting around, but we're going to focus on this one, and that works well. And by the way, on my website, bow-tie-treasures.com, in the drop-down menu in your shop, you can see my link to Dixie Belle ordering. I also have a link for Amazon, and things like this knife is on there, and you can see a lot of the products or things I use around the shop. So little plug for helping you guys out on that. So let's start low and then we'll work high. And I need to, later on I'll have to come in here and just break this up, but right now I think we're doing pretty good. So everybody ready to go? All right, I'm ready. So at this point right now, all I'm going to do, there we go, just a touch of paint. You don't need a lot, but it's really up to you how much you want to put on there. So you're going to see how bold this is. And all I'm going to do is start in corners and touch and scrape. And you can even flip the knife over because it'll have some paint there too. And you can put as much as you want or as little. And you pick a color that is bold or color that's subtle. You might want this just to be really soft. And notice I'm going to turn the knife upside down. I'm trying to use all the paint on that one dip. And the reason I do that is because when I started out, it was a lot of paint, and now I have just a little bit, and that just a little bit gives you just a light glazing of paint. A little bit more paint, and I like to do this mostly around edges. So right now I'm just going the long way, and I have to go upside down because my table's kind of in the way. You put as much in here as you want. Keep it random, but I like to make it look like the edges are a little bit more worn out than others. And if I can, I will try and bring you in here just a little bit. So here we go. That's just me dragging. I just want a little bit of that paint. And already that complement color, which is the opposite side of the color wheel, is really making a great impact against this bright, nice, lovely blue. And at this point, you're just really looking for opportunities or places. You might even try something like on this is the keyhole, and you might even do something where you bring a little bit of attention there. Maybe it's a little bit more worn out. There's a lot of wood grain on here, so bringing attention to a keyhole is always nice. I have not, at this point, I've not done any kind of, we're going to bring a mister bottle or a sprayer out in a minute. But my goal is not, I don't want these to be running, but you can. Right now, if I took my mister bottle and sprayed this, it would start dripping, and you can do that. That's totally up to you. That's just not the look that I'm going. There were wood handles here. So again, you could maybe give it a little bit more worn. And I'm gonna paint the wood handles later. I like to take the handles off because it gives me a flat palette to work with. I don't have to keep dodging that knob. And I could easily replicate some of this look on the knob later on and then put those on later. So like if I'm top coating, I don't have to go around a knob. And I kind of like the wood knobs on some of these dressers, and I can paint it anyway. Running out of paint, not running out, need to reload. So you are the creator here. You get to determine how much, how little, how far across. Maybe you can just randomly put it in there. And this kind of technique can work on just about any piece that you want to keep it casual. I put boho. Some people would call this boho, but sometimes boho also is a little drippy. We're not doing too much. I'm not going to do too much of that. So you kind of you step back and decide how much should you do. And you can always add more. So I recommend you just kind of do some of it and then see if before it gets too crazy, if it's getting out of hand. I really like this type of work. Once in a while, it just breaks me away from being too stiff, or maybe not, it keeps things fun. You can do this effect on smaller things like jewelry boxes. But I love the versatility of the Dixie Belle product that allows me to experiment and play around with different techniques like this. I'm curious if any of you have ever tried this. I don't know about you, but I'm already ready for spring. Some of you might be sitting with snow outside, so I thought it was really nice to be able to, when I saw that I had not used this Dixie Belle Blue, I thought, man, it's the right time. It's getting close to spring. Cindy says she loves this technique. Yeah, it's fun. I don't do it a lot, but I will tell you, and I've talked about this before, I really think that if you're into furniture painting, I would get as diversified as possible with your techniques so that gives you a little bit more fun. It might be that your customers need a little bit of fun because they think all they need is maybe farmhouse or blending, I don't know. But in this technique, it's almost a little bit like we're doing some chippy, but I'm not scraping any of this off. So I'm using the palette knife to do this. And so just easy. If you feel like you put too much, probably let it dry and then paint over it, or lightly sand it and paint over it, because you don't want to, if I took a wet rag over this, it would start smearing it, and that's not the look you want, so I would be careful with that. I would go into this technique with a little bit of a carefree attitude, from a standpoint of you can't judge your work too much and think you haven't made a mistake, because I think there's a word in design that we would use called gestalt, and gestalt is basically the sum of its parts, and what that means is all of it's going to come together, and you might be overly criticizing a stroke you just did, but honestly it's all going to work together as a composition. So don't kill yourself if you say, wow, that's too bold. But when it's all done, that might be just fine and perfect. So don't get too critical. With this kind of technique, you have to kind of let that go. If I was doing something really refined, then I might be a little bit more judgmental on it. But you can see I liked, on a vertical type situation, it's nice to go vertical. And then on a horizontal, I would go horizontal. And try to get all the places you think you want. I will tell you that when I started out on this, I thought maybe I'll keep this technique towards the bottom only, but it was just too nice to only do in one spot. Also on my website, boho-style.com, under the live menu, I put my Dixie Belle Facebook lives on one page, kind of as a gallery, so you can catch up that way too. And those are always nice. I send a newsletter out probably twice a month at this rate, and I try to highlight the videos I've done, so in case you miss it. Because I do this one to share some fun techniques, share Dixie Belle's products. As a content creator, I love to help teach and train and showcase as much as I can. But I really thought this technique was perfect. Give you all something different to see and maybe enjoy. So I'm just kind of sporadically putting this around, but as you can see, I'm almost done with this color on this side. I need to do the other side, but we'll see if I'm trying not to put too much paint on. The more paint you put on there, the longer it's going to take to dry, so I may have to come back with the heat gun and just dry a few areas. So this is probably not a technique that I would necessarily say that I can get done in one night. So let's focus on the front. The next color is Rebel Yellow. I'm not going to do much of this. This is just for a pop of highlight, just to add a little bit of hint of color. So again, I'm not going to be doing too much. There we go. I'm not putting much paint on there. So on this one, if this was 100%, what I just did with Rusty Red, I want to do about a 5 to 10%. And I'm just going to put a few surprise dabs here and there, okay? Nothing super deep. Just a little bit of hint, almost like over time it got nicked or chipped, or it was originally painted this color and we painted over it and this kind of peeking through. So you're simulating chippy paint, if you will. You might have a different way of describing it, but that's how I would call it. So just a few. Okay. So it's a little thicker there. It's going to cause me a little bit of problems for the next step, but I'll give it a little bit of a heat gun if I need to. So it is going on a little thick, and that's okay. So just again, just a little touch of paint. And we're just going to tip here and there. You don't need to go to art school to do this. You just need to have a little patience. But look at that, I forgot to put some red over there. So on this one, occasionally maybe hit an edge. Just where you think you might see this. But totally, literally, I'm making this up as I go. I'm just kind of putting a little touch here and there. Nothing crazy. Let's work down here a little bit. You know, just touch an edge. You feel like you need to be Bob Ross for a day. Let's put a happy little touch there and there. What do you call it? Happy clouds or something like that? I forget. I used to watch a lot of Bob Ross. I loved art growing up. I was an art student, so I totally dig Bob Ross. Okay, so I'll probably need to come up to the very top. As I mentioned at the very beginning, don't forget, you can substitute any color with whatever you want to do. Like if you're trying to do something for your decor and you would rather this be, like I actually pulled out sea glass thinking that maybe sea glass could do that. And so you can just get a highlight that you think would work. But keep in mind, for me, I like the fact that I did a complement. We're still across the color wheel, if you will. But the yellow and the teal or the blue have a little bit of the same colors in it, so it still works. Depending on which video you watch, I've demonstrated washing, blending, shading. So I'm going to do a little bit of a wash. I'm pouring some water out of my big squirt bottle, just so I don't have to go to a sink. So give me a second to do that. And this is where I'm going to use sea glass. I'm going to use my mini. I love this brush, probably top 3 brushes of mine. I love the mini. And I'm just going to dip into the paint because I don't need a lot of paint. So let me just show you. And this is purely experimental. What I mean by that is I might have too much water, I might not have enough paint, so just at this point be prepared to put a little bit more. I probably got too much water. I'll know here in a second. So if you have to dip a few more times into your paint, just bring a little bit of that. This is just faster than me getting a scooper and trying to do all that. So what I'm going to do, this mixture of paint is going to do a couple things. One, it's going to tone down the color. It's a little bright. It looks too fresh and clean. And for a boho look, I want this to feel a little bit more beached or sun aged. So this is it's almost like a whitewash. It's gonna knock it down a little bit. And I'm gonna have a rag handy because my rag is going to allow me to dab and make the paint a little bit more regular. Go into my paint just a little bit. I want to knock that paint down. And my goal here isn't to necessarily mist. My brush is so wet. I don't need much of that wash, but you could also put some paint on your brush and then mist your brush. So here's where you need to determine if you have too much paint. Do you see the difference on the two? Here's where you can use the rag and just dab, and it gives you an irregular look. You can also come back and mist it, and it'll soften any brush strokes. So if I do this, I'm trying to get to a point where I can show you the. Let's do this. Let me just put some paint down. I can take the Scarlet brush, and you can get longer. It's a wider brush than the mini, but you can do longer brush strokes. It's just a different experience or a different style. So here I just dipped into my wash that I made, and I'm going side to side. But keep in mind that this might give you more of a too predictable, and that's where I think sometimes the rag just kind of breaks it up, gives it a little bit of an irregular feel. I mean, after all, we just put palette knife salt and stuff all over it, so the last thing I want is predictable and the same. So what I don't want is really, really wet. I don't want that's running down. You might like that, and I have nothing against it, but on this piece, that's not what I want. So here, right here, I just had some of the rusty nail, rusty red. That's where I was kind of concerned that if it wasn't dry. So just have your brush ready. So all we're doing is just toning this down, and we're also putting a little bit of a wash over the other colors, and it's toning them down too. So if you think that the rusty nail is too bright, this will tone it down too. But I think for me, this just really softens the piece up, but I'm not losing that, what do you call it? Lost my train of thought there. It's washing it out, but I'm not losing the boho style, okay? And this is sea glass, and you can use any color you want. Like, I had thought about actually using a gray because I use Boss, but the sea glass keeps it tropical. All right, and so here you can apply misting, or you can bring out your large squirt bottle and drip it. Totally up to you. I'm gonna switch back to my mini. My mini holds a little bit more water than the Scarlet does, so it's going to be a little bit more profitable at this point. Like I said, I've been experimenting with the Scarlet. It's really nice to know what your brushes can do and what technique it helps them with. So you figure out a nice way to keep it looking the style you want. Overall, when I'm done, it's going to have a custom. I really want people, I would love for you, or anybody that looks at it, go, how did he achieve that? And once in a while, if you feel like you got too much rusty nail going, dab it. But I really don't mind if the rusty nail gets into this. It's part of the look. Makes it look aged. Once in a while, I think it's perfectly fine if you get a little run. It keeps it fun. Just going back and looking. So I'm not really saying that you have to follow these colors. I'm just saying that the technique is something that you definitely should be able to achieve with your color palette and your piece. And I think you'll have fun if you try it. Maybe try it small on something. This Empire dresser is kind of proves to have some challenges, but so far so good. Amy says these colors in her home. Love the way this looks. Yes. These colors are not in my home, but I wouldn't like it. Some people just need a pop of color, and I don't do a lot of white and cream per se. So I think it's fun to, if you're doing stuff in a booth like I am, it's nice to show your people, hey, look what you can do with color. Because again, we could match pillows if we needed to and all that other stuff. So, all right, I think I need to go back and kind of touch up the top again, but I'll do that later. The next step, so this is the flat small. One of my favorite brushes too. I love this brush, and you can kind of see one's been used and one's kind of new. And I like it just because it's very versatile size. So that's the main reason. For this one, I need my mister bottle. And what we're going to do is we're going to add, let me bring you guys in for this one. We're going to add some shading to this. For me, this is not anything new that I've demonstrated, but if you haven't seen this, I like to use chalk paint for my shading, not wax. But you can do the same method with Voodoo Gel Stain, also with glaze. So notice how I'm adding almost like a, I hate to say a dirty look, just almost like it just hasn't been cleaned. But the chocolate reminds me a lot of Dixie Belle's Van Dyke Brown too. So you could do the Van Dyke. And this is another technique where you put as much as you want. And I'm using the Dixie Belle's French tip, only because I like how it's tapered and the natural bristles just soften really well. And so what I'm trying to simulate here is that the piece is older and just isn't quite as, hasn't been cleaned over time. So this is what I'm saying is optional. If you don't want that aged or dirt look, I would not proceed to this step. But can you imagine you could probably even do this technique with a nice bright color and still fade it. Last night on my live, on my bow tie page, I did this technique a little bit, but you could almost make it, it's like we're blending, but I'm only doing one color. My paint underneath is fairly dry. None of that's coming up, or I would be having rusty nail. I have my rag handy if I get too far out of where I want it to be. I'd like for it to kind of look like it's a shading too. So you add as much or as little of this as you like. And I'm mainly focused, let's do this technique. Spray it, keep it wet. Apply just a little bit. You can do this with a craft brush if it's too much. Just a little bit of the chocolate. You can do coffee bean, you can do stormy seas, whatever gives you that color feel that you want. And this is, other than just top coating, this is the last step of this look I'm trying to achieve. Oh, where did that come from? That's why it's always good to have a wet rag around. I must have grabbed too much paint right there. Live on camera, mistakes as they happen. And that's fine. I would recommend you consider maybe having, oh, there's chocolate on my rag, that's what happened. You can decide how much vignetting you want to do. I would maybe call it vignetting, right? If this was a photo on Instagram, we'd call this vignetting. So you can see how from a distance, that little bit of a technique is going to add some character and age to it. I'm trying to remember, I don't know the last time that I've done this technique, and I'm putting my hand up because for this technique, it's not ideal to get misting on other parts you finish. So it might be nice to work top down. I always forget which way to go, I should go, but that's why I put my hand up. I'm excited to know that you're seeing something different. That's what was my goal today, is let's do something different. And this piece just, sometimes I'll go on Pinterest or the chalk enthusiast group and just see what other people have done, see what inspires me. And sometimes it just takes me seeing a color, not necessarily the color, but if I said, you know what, blue sounds good. And the next thing you know it, you start building your art piece. And that's what we're doing. We're all, if you're painting with chalk paint, you're an artist. So I grant you artistic title. And that's all. We're just making this up as we go anyway, right? You can see this is going to take me a little bit of time with the mirror and everything else I got to do. But, you know, do a side a day. You know, in a week's time, you have your piece done. And so what do y'all think? You like the, you see this is the after, optional, like I said, this is before. So you add as much as you want in whatever color. When I top coat this, all of this will take on the same, right now it's a little chalky feeling, not feeling, but it's kind of matte. When I top coat it, like maybe a satin, it'll just really bring out the colors and look richer, and it'll really be nice. And I'm excited to get to that point. Let's do right here. I'd like to darken up the keyhole a little bit. Let's just do both of them. So there's still plenty of paint on my brush. Once you get some on there, you don't need a lot. I'm not really staining the piece. Toning, maybe. And use your rag to kind of taper and fan it in. If you need to mist your French tip to keep it moving the paint, that's fine. That might be easier sometimes than misting the actual paint. Since there's a natural shadow here, you could just keep playing that out and go all the way across. So there's hardly any paint on my brush, just enough to give it a faint shading. So you'll see how now it just looks nice and worn. But keep in mind, all this is paint, no wax, no glazes, nothing crazy, just paint that you should have sitting around. If you don't have brown, you could probably mix it. Red and green together will give you a cool color too. So definitely experiment. And if you ever, if you do something like this, I'd love to see what you do. And I think it's really a cool technique. Let's work on this top drawer. It does seem like I have seen a decent amount of Empire dressers around, but they're just so cool. This is my first one to do. I think they have really good bones to them. If you know, just nice character. But I will say the little harp-shaped edge, it's so it's not a joy to paint. Getting the paint all in there. So just be careful when you're doing this technique to let your layers dry so that you're not doing too much of the smudging around. But don't be afraid that if your rusty nail starts dripping, it's okay. It's all part of the process. I hope this encourages you to go out and try something like this. And you might surprise yourself. Maybe if you've been stuck in a rut doing the same thing, it might be nice to try 1 or 2 or 3 of these steps and see if that helps you. You could, for example, paint this piece the Dixie Belle Blue and go straight to the shading and stop and not do any of the palette work. And that's cool too. It's all up to you. And I'm just looking for places that I would think that someone's hands and just things hasn't been wiped off over time. And I guarantee you do something like this, when people walk by your store or see it posted online, they'll wonder, how old is it? Where did you get this? How did you accomplish it? And that's really the goal. If you like it, let the world know. Let's do this. Let me show you, just for comparison, because it's been an hour since we started. This was the original color, bright Dixie Belle Blue. And look where how much character we've added to it. So we've come a long way. I think they're both still nice. I mean, I'm not saying I don't like the Dixie Belle Blue, I'm just saying I think for an older piece, it's nice to do a nice older technique. So just to give you some contrast between that, it's definitely come a long way, and I'll keep working on this. By all means, leave questions, send me a message if I can help. But I think that's going to be it for this live demonstration. I hope this was helpful. A lot of great techniques. It's not as advanced as you think it is. I just tagged it that way, but you can totally do this. So thanks for joining us tonight, and appreciate the opportunity to teach you a few things. Y'all take care.
that's the end of the show. Make sure you subscribe and ring the bell before you go. Bye!